What is up, beautiful minds? Today, I have decided to tackle on one of the most discussed and controversial topics of modern times, mass immigration. Now, I've noticed that a lot of takes on this matter don't really do a good job at explaining what mass immigration really means sociologically speaking, and why it is ultimately not a good thing for any society. The general discourse around immigration is rather shallow. Both sides of the political spectrum get it wrong, but in different ways. Right-wingers are technically correct on the matter, but for the wrong reasons, most of the times. And left-wingers, I don't know, man, they're just full of midwits, like serving as living examples of the Dunning-Kruger effect. Now, I don't want to sound like a le-based centrist that debunks everything. That's not me. What I mean by both sides get it wrong is that this is actually not really a political issue, or at least it doesn't need to be. It's been politicized, and I know it has, but it really doesn't need to be. What I mean by that is that the sociological reasoning I want to explain to you applies to any sovereign nation, not just Europeans. And most nations do follow this doctrine outside of Europe, or in the case of Poland. So it's not a matter of European culture being more valuable and important. It's a matter of stability and general culture preservation. Regardless of whether we are talking about European culture, or Indian culture, or African culture, it's completely irrelevant to the scope of the argument. To some of you, this might sound like cultural relativism, but it's not. And like any other theory that just boils down the matter to it depends, I think cultural relativism is flawed. But if applied critically and selectively, it can help you understand that at the end of the day, we're all freaks from someone else's perspective. And sure, some cultures are straight up cannibals, and I can only see myself as meal from their perspective, which is why absolute relativism doesn't work if you live in reality. What I want to apply this to is cultures that are indeed starkly different from ours, and by ours I mean European, but that still hold some semblance of structure and value, so definitely not tribalistic cannibals. At the moment, a lot of people hate Muslims and Islam, and there's plenty of reasons to despise their culture from our perspective, sure, but they can very much say the same thing about us, with all the progressive stuff, like not stoning gay people to death immediately, or women's rights. So from their perspective, we are the degenerate ones. This stuff for us is completely normal and actually crucial to the functioning of a normal society, but to them it's complete degeneracy. What we should do right now is not trying to decide which culture is the superior one. We should just recognize that we are very different and that we should just agree to disagree. The clash between the two cultures should have never happened. It's the result of uncontrolled immigration that brought up these two cultures that were never meant to come in contact with each other, let alone live together in the same sovereign nation. Intuitively, it's clear that two incompatible societies should not try to live in the same nation, but sociologically speaking, why is that the case? Let me introduce you to the concept of social groups. Social groups are collections of social units joined under a natural, artificial, implicit, or explicit contract. What's a social unit then? In all but one case, social units are simply smaller social groups up until you reach the smallest possible rank of social groups, which is usually assigned to families. A bunch of families, once they stop fighting each other, they come together and form what we used to call a tribe. A group of tribes that stop fighting each other can then form a village. Multiple villages can form a city. multiple cities can form a region or a county or a kingdom. Then you get to nations, and from nations you get to confederations. You get the point. Now, the bigger the social group, the longer it takes for it to form. It is a complex process that also requires specific conditions to be met. These conditions are most of the times just similarities between social groups, or in this case, social groups acting as social units trying to create a bigger social group. Now, the similarities are usually a similar religion, which brings similar traditions, similar moral philosophy, an identical or very similar language between each other. And these are all very important, but social groups don't just come into existence with these similarities between them. Obviously, they usually come naturally as the social groups start to interact with each other and start to intermingle. And even after years of interacting with each other and finally gaining a lot of similarities between them, it's still not certain that they would want to stop being independent social groups and start being social units, part of a bigger social group. And that's because becoming part of a bigger group implicitly entails that you are also going to give up part of your sovereign power. And most sovereign powers don't just willingly give up their influence over their people. At that point, you're not the sole authority over your people anymore. You're not at the top of your social group anymore, because now your social group is the second step. Now, the bigger step, the bigger social group, is going to create new power structures, and you might not even be part of them. As a ruler, you'd want absolute power. And if you're at the top of the social group, then you have it. But if your social group becomes a social unit of a bigger social group, then at that point you're not at the top anymore. There's more important people that your smaller social unit can go to if you're doing something wrong that they do not like, which they couldn't do before that. I mean, I don't think I have to tell you why this wasn't exactly the favorite thing for a king to do. Well then, how do we get past these roadblocks? It's usually either through revolution or through external influences of hostile social groups that are at a later, bigger stage of social groups and are therefore bigger than you, such as, I don't know, a nation living next to you, and you are a county, so you can't really do anything against the nation. You are powerless, and at that point you might start to think, okay, maybe I need to come together with the other counties that I've been at war with for like 100 years and tell them, listen, maybe we have bigger threats, and if we do not unite, we're gonna be eradicated. There's plenty of historic examples about this. Italy, for once, was divided in small insignificant duchies and kingdoms, making it an easy target for already established nations and empires, such as France, Spain, the Austrians, Britain, which all took turns in conquering and managing the small and powerless social groups of the Italian peninsula. Now, Italy was not a nation, and therefore it was just a free buffet of territories, and it took roughly 360 years of being Europe's for Italy to finally realize that if they wanted to stop being gang raped by everyone around them, they had to unify. So even with a shared religion, similar dialects for the most part, a shared heritage in the form of the Roman Empire, and all the reasons in the world to form a nation, it took Italy that long to come into existence. This is how complex the process is. And it is not only complex, but it is also surprisingly fragile once it has formed. The bigger the social group, the harder it is to maintain. I know this doesn't sound like groundbreaking knowledge, but it seems like a lot of people just forget about it when talking about mass immigration. If you take 20 million Germans and you move them to, I don't know, Greece, they're not just going to suddenly stop being German. Being German does not mean existing inside of the geographic lines of Germany. It's a lot more than that. And so if you move 20 million of them, there's now a social group that's 20 million of them inside of another social group, and they do not belong there. And we have already established that the bigger the social groups, the harder it is for them to just accept the fact that, okay, now we're social units, we're not social groups, we're not independent social groups, we're going to abandon a part of our traditions and we're going to just form a bigger social group with these other social units with which we do not even share that much. That's never going to happen. And it would also be quite unfair to tell the 20 million Germans to just stop being German, to stop speaking Deutsch, to stop eating Wiener Schnitzel or whatever, just because now they've been teleported to inside the geographic lines of Greece. That doesn't make any sense. They're never going to do it, and they shouldn't do it, honestly. And now, all of a sudden, you have two different languages in your nation. You have two sets of traditions. You have two sets of cuisine. And sure, with Germany and Greece, they're both European, so it's not like they're gonna tear each other apart. But I don't think I have to explain to you that if you do this with social groups that come from entirely different parts of the world, that do not share our religion, our traditions, our beliefs, our moral philosophies, our languages, nothing. I don't have to explain to you why this is simply never going to work. And again, the bigger the social group, the harder it is. Now, if you import like a family from Pakistan, they might integrate, they might just become part of the bigger social groups. Sure, I mean, it's just a family. It's not that hard to move past their origins and just be part of the bigger groups. And that's also because it's the more convenient thing to do for them. But if you import 5 million of them, and they all come from Pakistan, they're gonna form a small, a 5 million sized social group inside of your nation, and there's nothing you can do about it. And you can't even say it's their fault, because a lot of us would do that. A lot of us did that when we went to the States. If you look, again, this doesn't just apply to Pakistan or to India or to whatever you want to use as an example. We did that when we went to the States. We did that. Italians did that. We went there in millions. Millions of us went there. What happened? Did we assimilate or did we create mafia? I don't remember, but I don't think we assimilated. So it's not a matter of being African, being Indian, being Pakistani or whatever. It's not a matter of race or whatever. It's just that when you import millions of people from a very well-established social group, they're not just going to stop being part of the social group to become a new social unit inside of the alien social group they're inside of at the moment. And the fault is not really of the people coming in. The fault is on the people that allow them to come in millions to create social groups, alien social groups that act as like a tumor to the bigger social groups that we have created, that we have established over hundreds of years, the nations. And again, I already said it, it took 360 years for Italy to bond together and unify. And I don't have to explain to you that the differences between the small kingdoms in Italy weren't really that deep. So imagine now a group of millions of people, a social group of millions of people that do not share anything with you. Not a single part of their being, of their existence is shared with you, ideologically speaking.
They come in to your country. Why would you expect them to assimilate? They're not going to do it. They're never going to do it. And we've been fed this propaganda that it's not their fault. We need to do more work to make them assimilate, to make them join our cultures and become part of our nation. It's not going to happen. Again, it's millions of them. They have no incentive to do so. Also because the help that we're providing them to help them assimilate is literally giving them free housing, free money, and free food. So they have literally no incentive to assimilate. Zero. They don't have to learn the language. They don't have to learn the culture. They don't have to blend in. They don't need it. They have 10 times the stuff that they had in their third world country. So there's no need for them to assimilate. But even if that wasn't the case, it's just not humanly common to just go into a place in the millions and just say, okay, we're not a social group anymore. There's nothing that bonds us anymore. We're just a social unit. We're just part of a bigger social group because now we are inside the geographic lines of this nation. That's simply not how it works, and it's not really their fault. It's the fault of the people that allowed them to come in millions. The people coming in do have faults, but they're different faults, and that's stuff for another video. Once you start explaining the concept, I think, or at least I hope so, that it becomes pretty clear why importing big social groups from foreign nations is not going to work out. It doesn't matter what you do, it's not going to work out. So that's it from me, folks. I hope I was clear enough in explaining my concepts, and if I wasn't, please leave a comment down below. If you like the video, and if you want to, you can subscribe. Hope to see you all in the next one. Never stop thinking critically.